Weilà raga, come state ragazzi? Benvenuti in questo nuovo video. Welcome to this new video today where we're going to talk about why study Italian and what should you do with it. I've covered this topic a number of times here on my channel over the years, but today I'd like to list for you guys a whole slew of things that you can do once you learn Italian. So why even discuss this? Why would something like this even come up? Because clearly you found yourself to this channel, which means there's something there. There's some kind of interest that you have that is drawing you to la bella lingua. So ask yourself for a second, why am I curious in knowing more about Italian? Why did I decide to start getting into this? And that's really step one. You need to figure out what your goal is. Now, once you have a goal, that doesn't mean it's going to be your goal forever. One of the joys I've come to find about language learning that I've been talking about for the longest time is that learning a language is a lifestyle. It's a mentality, and lifestyle is another way of saying a way of life. That's something I did not know. I really didn't know anything about language learning when I somehow stumbled into it. So what I think we'll do after we're done in just a moment talking about how you need to have goals and how goals change over time, I want to shift the focus to tell you a bit about me and how I found myself in this situation. And through that, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of things you can do to maintain the language, to keep learning it, and also how to use the language in your life and make it make sense for you. So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. So to finish up on the goals thing, you may have a goal in the beginning. It might just be, hey, I've always heard of Italian things, been around it in culture because maybe you go to Italian restaurants, maybe you like certain Italian foods, or maybe you're hearing about everybody traveling to Italy and they tell you about their Amalfi Coast vacation, and so you're thinking, well, I want to know what that's like also. Whatever the case may be, that's just one thing, right? That's just one interest, one goal, something you're trying to achieve. Once you've achieved it, or once you kind of have an understanding about it, things change and you end up pivoting. And so that's why I always say in my videos that every step you take is going to lead you in a particular direction. And there's nothing wrong with the direction you're going in, whether you're going backwards, going forwards, this way, that way. It's just the way that it is, because learning a language is a lifestyle. And just like your life is something that is comprised of many things, so too will be your experience with learning Italian. Okay, so now let's transition to talk about my experience. When I first started studying languages, I was really small, really young. I recall being in kindergarten, or probably it was first grade. We were learning the colors and the days of the week in Spanish. I remember we were doing things like lunes, martes, miércoles, jueves, viernes, sábado, domingo, and we always got really excited when we got to that last bit, sábado, domingo. That was a lot of fun. I remember learning things like amarillo. I really loved pronouncing that double L in Spanish, amarillo, and naranja, or rojo. I loved the sounds. I thought it was cool. I had no understanding of what Spanish was, where Spanish came from, who I could use Spanish with in my life. I was probably 6 years old, so my frame of reference was really small. And that's okay, but I always therefore viewed Spanish as something in the classroom. As I got older, I came to understand that obviously Spanish was something that you didn't just have in the classroom where you're learning colors and days of the week, but there was no sense of appartenenza, which means belonging. There was no way I could find a legame, like a tie or a relation to my life and this language. Why would I need it? What would I use it for? And so even though there were times where I loved Spanish and I did really well at it, we would have like weekly spelling tests, or even when we had a test. I remember Fridays, we always had a test in Spanish. Don't know why. And I never had to study. But then we got to a point where I had to study and I needed to start figuring things out because I didn't know how to conjugate verbs and didn't know vocab. But why am I talking to you about Spanish? Because obviously we're talking about Italian here today. The point of me sharing that with you is because how you even perceive language is going to help you in your journey of understanding your goals. Because it needs to have a perché, as we say in Italian. Ha bisogno di un perché. Devi capire il perché. Something similar we could say in English, besides you need to know why you want to learn it. You need to have a because. You know, sometimes we say that. Like, what is your because? What is your why? What is your reason? And so that is what we're looking for. So that's why I never really went anywhere with Spanish. I ended up, I think it was 2020, returning to Spanish for the first time and like seriously saying, I'm going to take lessons, I'm going to work with a workbook, I'll take even a look at Duolingo. I want to actually make this happen. And then I ended up revisiting it a couple of more times after that. And I've done okay. I'm happy with my very basic level of Spanish. And I'm also happy with the fact that I'm not perfect in it, you know? But I know I'll always go back to it because I can. That's also something I ended up learning about languages in my journey. You can pop in and pop out of them. You don't have to stay in it forever. You can go wherever literally the wind takes you. You know, I don't feel like doing this. I feel like doing that. Because I don't need Spanish, which is something we're going to touch on. The need versus the want or the desire. That's something important to discuss as well. So, because I had no place for Spanish in my life, that's why I never took it very far. But now let's start talking about Italian and how Italian was different. So, coming from a family that had Italian spoken within it by various family members, immediately there was some interest there because you would hear these words, you'd see how certain family members would just go in and out of English. And I would observe that and think, how? Like, how do you do that? Or I always have this image in my mind, and I've had it in my mind for so long that I don't know if it is myth or reality. So forgive me for not knowing whether or not this is a true story. But for whatever reason, I can't get out of my head this image, which has driven me for all of eternity. I picture myself in a cafe, and I'm having a conversation with one of my friends. In through the door walks a foreign-speaking friend of my friend who's sitting across from me at the table. My friend says, "Oh, hold on. My buddy just walked in." They get up, greet this foreign-speaking friend, and they're laughing, and they're joking, and they're talking out loud, but having a private conversation, because no one else can understand them because they're not speaking English. And there I am watching this, being like, how cool is that? So maybe this happened, maybe this is a dream, whether a real dream or a daydream, like a speranza, like a hope. I can't tell you, because it's just been fixed in my head for many, many years. But I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be able to have a private conversation out loud, but no one know what I'm saying. I wanted to be a part of that club. And I also wanted to be able to produce language just like that. Switch it on, switch it off. I didn't know what that would feel like. I didn't know how you get to that point, but I was fascinated. So that's something I always just wanted to do with language, but I didn't know which one that would be for me. And because, coming back to this family aspect, I saw family doing this kind of stuff, I figured, I think there's something accessible here, and that was Italian. I have a way to unlock this. So I started taking Italian lessons, and I realized all the years spent around my family members hearing certain words like parlare, the expression quanti anni hai, or even similar words like mangia, which we just have in our culture. Everyone knows mangia, mangia. All of a sudden, I was able to understand it. I could make those connections. So now that we've spoken a whole lot about this, I want to transition more into the stuff that you can actually take. So I'm kind of going to cut off this part here. But the point of what I'm saying is how it all sort of was born for me was I enjoyed Spanish, but there was no purpose. I always wanted to be bilingual in some sense, but didn't know how to make it happen. It was something I figured, who knows if I'll ever get to. But I had something that was already accessible thanks to Italian-speaking family members. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to use Italian, but at least I know some people that already speak it, and I've watched them do it, and so I kind of want to figure that out too. So that was what began this journey, you could say. And then, of course, so many other things started happening. How did I end up to making a YouTube channel? How did I end up becoming a teacher? Then you're going to start going in all different directions. But what I think is first, if you've got that little spark, you've got that little interest, I think it's worth seeing if that can ignite a flame. So lean into it. And then the more you lean into it, the more you're going to see, as we were discussing with pivot and steps you're taking, the more you're going to see where you want to go with it, and you will find your place within the language. That is really important. You have to see how the language can become your own, how you can be represented by that language, by that culture, that mentality, that lifestyle, how you can find your way. Because just as you speak your native language and you have your life that you've created, your cultural identity, your professional identity, personal, whatever other word you want to use, whenever we're drawn to something, it's because we see a part of ourselves in it, or there's something that it has that we want. And so now let's start talking about all these reasons that I wanted to share with you and all these takeaways you can have. So I've got a huge list. I'm just going to start spitting them out to you guys, sharing them with you, and let's see where that takes us, okay? So the first thing is, do you have some kind of family history with any language? It could be Italian, it could be whatever. And then maybe by learning that language, you're going to see how much you can unlock about understanding that cultural heritage, that background. So that's one thing you could look at. But let's keep it just to Italian. Maybe you have Italian heritage. Or maybe you've just been always curious about Italy because you go to Italian restaurants, you like Italian food, you see those friends that are traveling there, and you want to be a part of it also. The language is a huge key to making that happen. So once you start learning the language, you are now unlocking the people, you're unlocking the country's history, you're unlocking all of its social media and anything else you could consume media-wise, television, film, it could be YouTube videos, Instagram posts, TikTok posts, articles you read in newspapers, online, captions you see beneath photos. Back before we had an American Pope, a lot of people said, I can't understand the Pope, but if I know a little bit of Italian, I can understand the Pope. There are so many different worlds you can get into. Maybe you want to know about your profession and how it works in Italy. Let's say you're a physician. Maybe you want to know, what are they prescribing in Italy? What kind of medications do they use? What's the dosages of medication? How do they perform this surgery? Maybe you're not a doctor and maybe you are a teacher. How does someone get a job as a teacher in Italy? What's the difference between public and private school? How much does it cost to go to university in Italy? How does their school system work? What do they study? What's a common field that people get into? Or maybe you really like Italian art and Italian history and you want to learn about it in its native language. Because, yeah, you can learn about all these things in English, and that's perfectly fine. There's tons of material on it. But it's also something else to read the original text Even if you just read a few words, reading an original text or watching a movie in its original language doesn't mean you have to sit there at the very first minute and watch the whole thing through. You can skip around. You don't just have to focus on trying to get the whole thing. Take baby steps or skim through whatever you're interested in. You can watch multiple movies and multiple parts of them instead of seeing the whole thing. What I also like about language learning that may resonate with some of you, it helps me have more discernment. Now, what is discernment? Discernment is being able to judge something for yourself. Take a look at it, observe it under a microscope, in broad daylight, wherever you want to be observing this, and make sense of it for yourself instead of having someone else or something else tell you what it's like. As I've come to see throughout my life, and I'm sure many of you have come to see this as well, someone may tell you, I always use the restaurant example, you gotta go to this place. Now, I don't know if this is a New Yorker thing, it could be an American thing, but everyone in my life always hypes up a restaurant. You gotta go to this place. You gotta try that dish. Everything's you gotta do it. You're gonna die when you do it. And I end up going to the restaurant. Maybe I'm difficult to please. I don't know. Maybe I'm a food snob because I enjoy cooking, which is something else you can totally get into with Italian. You want to know about all Italian ingredients, authentic Italian recipes. You want to learn a recipe in Italian, learn it from Italians instead of from, let's say, an American chef on Food Network, or nowadays everyone's making TikTok and Instagram recipes. Point is, that's pretty cool to do. I end up going to the restaurant to return back to that story, and I'm like, this is what they were ranting and raving about? Or it helps me see sort of where they're at. Oh, you like this kind of food? Well, I don't really like that. Instead, try this place or do this or let me cook it for you. I end up sort of finding my way, right? And you see where other people are too. I like being able to discern something for myself. So the more knowledge I have, if I learn the language, I have more knowledge, I can see for myself what I think. Similar to a restaurant, if you actually go to that restaurant and you try it, you will know what you think. And then you can have a more in-depth conversation with that other person on what you think about it. So use that as an analogy, as a metaphor, to understand what can then happen when you know language. You're going to learn for yourself what you think instead of just hearing about it. Because we hear about all different cultures. There are all these stereotypes or cliches or just kind of urban myths that we have. And most often, once we hear it, and if we hear it from enough people or see it displayed in enough places, we sort of take it as gospel. We're just like, okay, that's the truth. That just is what it is. What's nice, though, when you start studying a language, is you're able to uncover, is that true? Is it not? How much truth is there within it? Is it, well, I see what you're saying, but it's kind of more like this, or, well, that's more of an old idea, or that's a Hollywood idea. That's something we were shown in movies, and it's a dramatized. You see where I'm going with this? So to not cut off that word for anyone watching this to learn English, version is what I was getting at. You're like, oh. And I find this all the time in my life. Right now I'm in grad school, so I'm doing a lot of research projects, a lot of things where I need to look up sources and get deeper in to different material. And I am rediscovering that joy I had many years ago when I was in college. And I remember I did one of my first research projects that really kind of resonated with me was learning about the minimum wage in one of my law classes. Not law school class, this is an undergrad law class, different thing. So I'm in this legal class, this law class, and we're learning about, it was all about labor law. And we had to do a project and presentation on the minimum wage and what are the pros and cons against raising it. I had my thoughts and opinions on minimum wage. If someone just said minimum wage to me, I had an opinion, I had an idea, as one does. When I started researching it, I was like, this is so cool. This is so fascinating. I started learning about everything you could think of related to minimum wage. And I suddenly realized, this is so much more complex than I appreciated. And I want to know more about this. And I understand that there's nuance to this. There's no one size fits all. That's why it's being debated. And now that I'm doing this with all Italian stuff, I'm doing a presentation that I'm going to give in a couple days as I'm filming this video on what I call the Italian-American dialect and talking about varieties of Italian in the United States, particularly in the New York area. And now, think about this, right? So minimum wage, I had no idea about because I was a college kid and I was learning about it for the first time. So that's one thing, right? And law is not something that I knew whether or not I'd get into the field. I didn't have prior experience and whatever. Italian, I have a lot of experience in. Lived experience, professional experience, you name it. But actually studying it in this formal, academic, scholarly way, I get to see how much of what I know is reaffirmed by the research I'm doing. I get to see how gaps can be filled in that I had and always sort of was trying to work out. And then I can even learn new things. I can see how something is, oh, that was from the 1970s. That's not the truth anymore. Like, I'm going to tell you one of the things I'm going to share in that presentation. I was reading this source from like 1975, and it was focusing on a community in the Philadelphia area. And it said how at that time, we had many more Italians in Italian neighborhoods and Italian enclaves, as they can also be called. Ethnic enclaves is a term they use. Italians were in these communities, and their language is what was the unifying force for that community. Today, the Italian language is not as much of a unifying force for an Italian-American community or an Italian-American idea. Now it's more about this shift of family values, family history, and us sort of having conversations talking about, what does this mean to you? Have you heard this? Does your family do that? Oh no, my family does it like this. Or what was the thing they always said? And so we're sort of rediscovering, trying to learn about it, trying to figure out how to move forward. So it's more about ideas than a language. It's more about values and characteristics and a swagger than just how you are because that's your country of origin and you're continuing your traditions. Fascinating stuff. And it's so much deeper than that. It's hard to obviously explain it in just a minute. So the deeper you get into something, the more discernment you have, the more you can challenge your long-held beliefs. You can be exposed to a new idea that sparks a new flame, lean into it, see where it will take you. Because as I was doing my research, I'm thinking about all these kinds of things where I want to do with my studies. And for a while, I was thinking about I'm just going to focus on italianità, so Italianness. But now that I'm getting into the more dialect, regional language, Italian variety side, and how that corresponds to italianità, I was like, ooh, maybe I want to spend more time with this for now. So that's what it's also like with a language, and why I always say in my videos, go wherever your pen leads you. Go wherever you feel like going. In the video I put out before this, where I show you a simple way of studying Italian in your spare time, particularly between when you're having a lesson or interacting with someone, we wrote like one line, a couple small sentences, but one line. That's okay. Like if you want to stop after that, if you want to change gears and go in a different direction than what you were planning on doing that day with your studies, do it. Like embrace it, enjoy it, lean into it. So yeah, I've got this huge list. I could go in so many other areas, but you just need to see, how is this language going to make sense in your life? Where can you use it? Who can you use it with? Also create a game out of it. You know, see how much you can learn. How much can I unlock? How can I figure this out? And that's why things like Duolingo can be useful, you know, like applications like that, because they keep you accountable. They hold you accountable. They're like, okay, well, you know, do you have a 7-day streak? 14-day streak? Can you keep it up? I accidentally paid for a whole year of Duolingo, so now I'm going to be using it. I'm using it to learn German. I had a 7-day free trial. And I gave myself a reminder to make sure I canceled it before the 7 days were up because I was going to just do a monthly instead of pay for the year. This is really the first time I've ever been actually using Duolingo and enjoying it. And I then get that charge on my card. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're in this for the next year. But having this concept of, I want to make sure every day I have that streak. I want to see how far I can go with this. I don't know how I'm going to use German in my life, but there's a spark there because in some parts of northern Italy, they speak German on the border with Austria. And I was like, I think I want to go there. And I want to go there and I want to speak German in Italy. That is scandalous for me. It's not scandalous at all, oggettivamente parlando, objectively speaking. But I want to do that. I want to do that. That's cool. I want to learn more about that people. See what I'm saying? You create these goals and these objectives for yourself. So, yeah. All right. I think I'm going to close it up there. I had so many things. I keep looking at my phone. I keep trying to think how I'm going to incorporate some of that stuff. But this is the way I make videos. I begin with an idea and I just go wherever my desire takes me. Just as I've been telling you guys in this video. All right. So we're going to close this up. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any thoughts, any ideas, any questions. And yeah, that's going to be it. I will link down below in the description that video I mentioned about how you can study in your spare time. I'll also have links for other videos such as my Zero to Hero Italian Grammar series, my free Italian course here on YouTube that will take you from zero to hero in Italian grammar. I've got my Learn Italian videos in order playlist, which has mixed into it the Zero to Hero videos as well. The order is just a little different because that playlist has its own order. I've got my Imparare l'Inglese videos, my Learn English videos. I also have on my channel, I think I have my podcast also listed in my description. You can watch that, mostly all in Italian, just a few episodes bilingual or in English. So yeah. All right, guys, always remember to spread the love, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Va bene? Ciao, ragazzi. Ciao.